You know, writers have a fear of, or can have a fear of the blank page. I've got a fear of the blank head, which is what I'm experiencing at the moment. I suppose I should just get on and introduce the show. There's always a feeling we like to think. We want to start with an anecdote, something a bit contemporary or contemporaneous, or what should I say, topical is the word I'm trying to look for. Too many syllables and everything else. Anyway, so welcome to the Comedy Slab. I've never known my... Yes? You put your hand up.
Sorry, did I have to put a hand up to ask you a question?
You do, yes. We're reliving Please Sir, which we referred to at the end of last week's podcast.
I just wondered, was that the title of a 1950s B movie, The Fear of the Blank Slab Head or whatever it was?
It does sound like it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I've never known you dry, so you're always there in a crisis, whether I like it or not.
You've never known me dry. I just sit here and glisten.
You're damp, but mostly moist.
I think it's the excitement of the pending podcast. I think that's what it is.
The pending podcast.
The impending podcast.
Unfortunately, this isn't the impending or pending. Oh no, I suppose this is the impending one. Anyway, I'm Adrian Lacey, speaking to you from the southeast of England. His nibs is in the Midlands of England. That is the English Midlands. There are, of course, Irish Midlands, which is remind me where your roots on your father's side were, because we were talking about Ireland last week with an Irish show.
County. Well, none of people know this. Well, people that know me do. But I lost my father a couple of weeks ago, and the downside of that is all too apparent. But of course, the upside of that is that I got to see some of my Irish relatives that I hadn't seen for quite a time. I was quite happy to say they came to pay their respects, and county. Although I think. I'm trying to work it out. I think I've got more Irish relatives in England than I've got in Ireland.
Right. It's not a competition.
No, they all seem to be clustered around the home counties. Funnily enough,
say something.
Yeah, for work, I think mainly. Leitrim, County Leitrim, is where my grandfather, in the village of Leitrim, in County Leitrim, ran a pub. He was a publican, J.J. O'Connor. And he ran the village pub, which is still there to this day. Curiously enough, it's quite emotional to see it actually in a weird kind of way, because you kind of think that's the link to the past. This building is still there, and it's kind of the centre, the focal of the village, and it's quite fascinating really. But so we're bog trotters basically. That's the.
Well, there is a link, because my grandfather on my mother's side ran an off licence. So we're joined at the hip flask, you could say.
Very good, very good.
That's not bad.
I love it. Do you know the thing I always remember? The off licence used to be a focal point in the area that I was born and brought up in, North Birmingham. And I always remember they used to sell loose sherry, which
what, in a bag?
Even as a kid, I thought what a wonderful concept that is. I think what it was, you weren't tied to any quantity.
Right, so you'd have as much as you could get through.
Yeah, but the off licence had this curious thing where they used to sell sherry. People would just turn up with their own bottle. But they did that. So they used to sell sweets and chocolates, sherry like that. And for some reason, our off licence sold eggs.
Eggs?
What was all that about?
I don't know, but an earth is an earth.
Oh, very good.
Not very good.
What you did there.
Yes. Anyway, okay, so I'm meant to be leading this and leading us into the show that we're putting on the slab. Shall I do all the usual explanations? I must be such if he was around today, I think my grandfather would be so disappointed how little I drink. It's such a terrible example and such a disappointment to the family.
But did he drink, though? I mean, because the curious thing is that my grandfather, as I say, being a publican, and my dad was a rubbish archetypal Irishman, because he didn't work on building sites. He did originally when he first came to England for about a year, 2 years. But after that, and he never really drank very much. So the stereotypes went right out the window where he's concerned. So you would think, and my brother and I don't really drink either. So, I don't know how generationally it works. It's a bit weird, isn't it, that one?
It is a weird one. My grandfather was known for, shall we say, I don't want to speak ill of a fine, upstanding person who was the self-styled Duke of Pinner. But when I was at a family funeral of someone entirely different, because he died some decades ago, but a family funeral recently, someone said he liked sampling the goods, which I think was code. But yeah, and he tried to get me on, in those days it was Mackerson. Do you remember?
Oh, yeah.
That
I used to, as a kid, I dabbled. Did you ever have the Mackie Vimto?
I thought you were going to ask me if I dabbled. Dribbled.
Which was
Mackie Vimto, did you say?
Yeah, you used to have half a Mackerson in a pint glass. And
way.
And a bottle of
You're
Vimto.
kidding me? Oh, no.
Oh, yeah, it's like you could drink it, and then you used to have another glass, and you'd like drink it and then spit your teeth into the other glass because they'd all fallen out. When you said you didn't want to speak ill of who was it that was the off-licence owner?
My mother's father. So he's the Scottish part of me.
No, all it was, it's just when you said I didn't want to speak ill of him or whatever. And for some reason, I thought you were going to say he liked to dance on the tables in my grandmother's dress. That just popped into my head.
Well, I think that says more about you than about my grandfather or about your grandmother. I mean, that does create quite an image.
Yeah.
It sounds like you've been at the Freeform Sherry yourself. But
Freeform sherry, loose sherry. Don't start trying to make it posher than it is. I'll have a glass of freeform sherry, please.
I couldn't think of the word. My brain's gone a bit loose.
I love it.
Freeform. Right, so where are we? If you're new to the show, lovely to have you for the first time. This is the Comedy Slab, the slab of comedy, wherein we take it in turns to choose a comedy to dissect on the marble of delights or horrors. And this week, or rather, I said last week's homework for this week, and so this week we are mostly slabbing I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue, a very long-running BBC Radio 4 series, the self-styled antidote to panel games, because I knew for a fact, as he'd confessed on numerous previous occasions, my partner in crime, my partner in the Midlands, Shane, is no fan of your average panel game or panel show. So, was there any trepidation around this? Are you allowed to say, or maybe you're not allowed to say at this stage?
Well, no, yeah, I have. I've been dreading it all week, thinking, oh, no, I don't know. The only reason I say that is because I haven't heard it for so long. So I'm kind of revisiting in that sense. I mean, it's something that I'm fully aware of, but I mean, I go back to the Willie Rushton days. Do you know what I mean? So
it is going back. You don't even you haven't even chanced upon it in recent years, then?
I can't. Do you know what? I reckon it's probably got to be over 5-7 years at least.
Oh, that was a while.
Was the last time that I went anywhere near it.
Although in I'm Sorry I Haven't a Clue years, which are different to human years, that's actually the twinkling of an eye, really, 5 to 7 years.
Yeah.
Do you know when it started?
I do, but only because I'm good at guessing. I would guess somewhere like Tuesday the 11th of April 1972.
I couldn't be sure about Tuesday the 11th because I'm not staring at the date like you, cheating in that particular part of the interweb. I can see April 72. Here's the thing. I remember I shouldn't confess to this, but 1972 was the 50th anniversary of the BBC. And so we're just around the corner. Once we get into the new year, we'll be 2 years away from the centenary of the BBC.
Hooray.
Yeah, that just about sums it up, your lack of enthusiasm. Anyway, what I'm saying is that makes it, by my calculation, getting on for 47 years old, which is not bad going for a panel show. Well, okay, a non-committal We will find your committal when we play the first of 3 audio clips which we have. So if you're not familiar with the show...
You always try and drag it out of me, don't you? Every time.
I do.
Every time.
I cannot help myself, Leek. What else do we need to say? Well, before I forget, do subscribe to the Comedy Slab if you're not doing so already. We'll get to social media or Sock Med. Is that what we must now call it? I thought it was some kind of overnight doctor service.
I thought it was like a holiday resort thing, whatever, holiday club. Oh, did you come here last year with Sock Med?
No, I was with I can't even think of it. Right, so that's the danger of trying to ad-lib when you're not quite up to it or not quite awake enough.
Can I just say as well, you're not nicking my phrase that I've coined.
Have I nicked it? What have I nicked?
I WhatsApped you that the other day, and now you're appropriating it like it's yours.
I can't even. Which phrase?
Sock Med.
Oh, you say appropriate. You're not the first to coin it.
I am.
I hope you jolly well are not.
I beg your pardon.
Well, anyway, if I can have that, you can have anti-social media, which I'm claiming.
Okay.
Never gets a laugh, probably doesn't deserve one, but that's sadly how it's turned out, actually. Social media has become particularly antisocial in some quarters. Not ours, we'd have to say. We're the good guys on the side of the angels. Right, without further ado, I think we should get into our first clip. So for anyone not familiar with I'm Sorry, I Haven't a Clue, it's a very formulaic show. It doesn't pretend to be otherwise. And in fact, it turns out one of the rounds we'll hear a bit later on was in the pilot show, for goodness sakes, in 72, or it may even have been 71 for the pilot, I'm not sure. But what to say? The opening monologue is a big part of it. For a long time, the first chunk of its history, the show was chaired by Humphrey Lyttelton, and I think he established this opening monologue as a big part of it. And it's obviously a way into the show. But I'm going to throw to Shane, just before we hear a part of that. If I was to ask you, and you're not allowed to cheat, he looks startled on Skype. We watch each other on this televisual service called Skype, just to help with the timing and for no other reason. You nearly woke up for a minute there, and same to you, with brass knobs on, sir. He's thumbed his nose at me. What a cheek. If I had to ask you how long it was from the very top of the show before the first round begins, just a gut feeling. In other words, most of that is monologue, but there is a bit of opening music, brass band and all of that. How long would you say into the show it is before the first, we get into the games proper?
7 minutes.
Oh, you went the other way. I was surprised it was as long as 4 minutes. Because to me, the monologue feels like 1 to 2 minutes, but you'd have to say about a third of that is laughter, and it is a bit longer than that, and then there's other bits and pieces. Oh, well, let's demolish that. Thank you very much, Shane. Do the same for you someday.
Sorry.
Ruin the impact. Okay, so
do you want to edit that bit out and we'll do it again? And I'll what was the answer?
No, because they'll accuse us of rigging this show, and our reputation depends on them believing that we actually mean what we say. 2 minutes? It's too late. Anyway, our rambling monologue goes on even longer and feels 10 times longer. So let's get straight into the clip now. And Jack Dee is the host, and we are in Portsmouth, and he's going to do some gags about that and see us into an introduction of the panellists.
In 2015, Portsmouth staged an exhibition to mark the 200th anniversary of the end of the Napoleonic Wars. The project suffered a lack of funding, but European neighbours chipped in with exhibits. France sent Napoleon's uniforms, Spain contributed standards flown at the Battle of Corunna, while from Geneva came a Swiss flag, which was a big plus. Don't turn on us yet. Modern Portsmouth is policed by the Hampshire Constabulary, whose record of crime clear-up rates last year was the worst since they stopped bothering. The Olympic fencer Bob Anderson was born in Gosport. At Helsinki in 1952, he won 2 gold and 3 silver medals for his fencing skills, and gardens there still have some of the neatest lattice and picket work in Finland.
3 minutes? I've got to stop doing that,
would you? Yeah, I think you have. That's called milking it or over milking it.
Yeah. He stopped short of introducing the panel anyway, didn't he, on that particular one? But
okay, rub it in. I got that wrong. Originally, I was going to keep in part of the intro to save time, but we'll have to say who the panelists are anyway.
There was, I know it's series 72, but there were some old gags in there, weren't there? Like the flag was a big plus, and
I'd never heard that, or if I have, it's so old that I've forgotten I'd heard it.
And the fencing gag, I mean, you could see that one coming a mile down the road, couldn't you, really, I think?
Again, you were ahead of me.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's interesting. I kind of like that. I mean, we know when they go to a place and then they take the mickey out of it. And I don't know if you ever heard Mark Steele's in town.
Oh, yeah.
Which he kind of took that concept, not so much took the mickey out of it, but told the story of the town he was in, but told jokes at their expense as well, or their neighbours' expense. And that always goes down well with a live audience, doesn't it? Really, I think doesn't he make a gag about the football team as well? About Portsmouth, is it, or something? Or
someone's had a heart problem, so the doctor prescribes something that won't. I'm telling it all back to front, but words to the effect, he needs to take it easy and
they bought him a season ticket to Portsmouth. Yeah, it's quite.
It was told much better than I tried.
Quite nice, yeah. Do you want my headline then?
I do urgently because you did that old thing on Skype where you were impassive. The other week it turned out you were looking at an advert for a special Hoover on QVC.
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure if you were doing that just so that you weren't laughing too much.
No, tonight I'm watching the Force Northeast whilst we do the show, which is one of those programs where they follow the cops around with the cameras and watch people being sick down each other on a Saturday night in Newcastle.
And that's just the coppers.
That's just a superintendent.
That's the secret policeman's ball.
No,
anyway, I'm dying to know because there is a genuine jeopardy for me here. I'm right on the edge of my seat, almost literally, wondering whether you like this, this institution as it's become.
I'm a bit disappointed that you thought I was sat there impassive when I was actually practicing my best wry smile, because I thought you won't be able to discern which way that one's gone. Yeah, it is an institution. I mean, for people who like being in institutions, it's all very well and good. But my headline for this would be, I'm sorry.
Oh.
I haven't the energy anymore.
Oh. Maybe it's you, not them.
Bang, there goes the neighbourhood is my subline. Yeah, I was really disappointed with it. Wasn't, and I don't know whether, because nostalgia ain't what it used to be, and I don't know whether it's just that I remember the thing more fondly and differently, but I didn't, and I don't know whether it's because I was listening to analyse it, which I always think can suck the joy out of it sometimes, don't you? It's something
which is why we try and at least synthesize the feeling the first time we listen that we're just your average listener.
Yeah.
Do you try that?
I think it's just, well, I do. Yeah, you're right. I think you put in the notes to the back of your mind, aren't you? Really, in that sense. But even so, having said that, I don't know. I kind of felt it was all a bit the same. And I think the vast majority of my listening to Clue has been in the car when it went out on the 6:30 slot. So it's unusual because you've got that, you're in the car on your commute coming home or whatever, and you kind of almost, your mind's wandering, you're listening to it. And I think when you sit and listen to it more intently, I don't know whether that was part of the problem as well. I mean, you're obviously still a big fan of this, are you?
Well, you say obviously. I sort of opt in and opt out because, I'm a funny one. Some of the gags make me hoot out loud, which I don't do lightly with radio when I'm on my own. And others are a bit more like you're describing, and at times it does sound a bit tired. But I did start out by saying it's pretty much... It's a very tight formula, and it's virtually not changed since the pilot show. I like the chutzpah, the cheek of that, really. But I sort of duck in and duck out of enjoying bits of it. overall, it's a marvellous institution, and you can hear how well it's going down in the room, the hall. I was just reading, they're playing to, your typical sort of local theatre size venues, 1,500 seaters or thereabouts, and they get rid of all the tickets within a week of them being advertised.
Oh, I believe
that's not bad going after nearly 50 years.
Although, I mean, you say nearly 50 years, it is a bit like Trigger's broom, isn't it? In that sense.
It's all been replaced.
Yeah. I mean, you're not a fan of Only Fools and Horses, but yeah, I mean, Trigger's saying about he'd had this broom 15 years, and he said, really? He said, it's the same broom you've had? He said, yeah. He said, it's only had 15 handles and 6 heads on it. And there is I mean, because I remember the days of Humphrey Lyttelton being the chairman of the programme, and I think to me, there were a different generation of comedians. I don't know. I mean, Tim Brooke Taylor sounds really old now, doesn't he? I mean, because he's not getting any younger. But you kind of,
well, none of us are, to be fair to him.
No. But I felt that, and that kind of upset me a bit, really. Because I've interviewed. I told you, I interviewed Tim.
No, I don't remember you saying that. Do tell.
He was doing a one-man show. He was touring a one-man show. I forget who was in it. And he was sorry, that fell flat. And he was doing this one-man show.
Oh, sorry.
It's all right. It's okay. And,
I was enjoying my tea.
And I took Angelina with me. And I think this was before we were married. And I said to Tim, do you mind if my other half sits in with it? He said, no, not at all. Anyway, so we were talking about, the stuff that he'd done over his career, and we were talking about the goodies and various bits and pieces. And about halfway through, we were talking about something, and he turned to Angelina and he went, "You've absolutely no idea who I am, have you?" Which was a bit embarrassing because she said no. But yeah, I just thought it was quite self-aware of him, really. Nice guy, but
he
like
probably
I say,
noticed a complete lack of reaction, as I've just demonstrated, but for different reasons.
So the kind of the fact that he just sounded a bit older than I was expecting kind of shocked and upset me a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be hypocritical to say I don't think of that at times, because actually I saw the show, the one and only time I've seen it, and it struck me as odd because it was in London, and I thought, why aren't we at Broadcasting House and Radio Theatre? I think I had to part with cash, which doesn't quite seem right for no, it can't be right, can it, for a BBC radio show? Anyway, it was in a West End theatre. They certainly will have had costs associated with the theatre. But and I did have that feeling. Oh gosh, yeah, this is kind of your own mortality. That's why we don't like it. It's not necessarily. I mean, we wish Tim all the best, and I want him to be around for as long as possible. But it's also our own mortality we're seeing, isn't it?
Yes.
And not to put too fine a point on it. And so it made me feel extra old. And here's the rub. That was when Humphrey was still alive. And that itself must be easily, that could be 20 years since I saw it.
Right.
But good on Tim for doing another 20 years after that.
Yeah.
I kind of think, yeah, it is like a British institution, which, can be good and bad.
The Jack Dee thing was interesting. I looked it up and I didn't realise that they settled on Jack Dee because they had, was it Stephen Fry and...
There was a third one, wasn't there, in rotation after poor Humph died?
Yeah, I can't remember. They tried Stephen Fry and... I can't remember who it was.
I'm going to see if I can beat you. Keep talking slowly.
Stephen Fry and somebody else and Jack Dee, and they said that the shows with Jack Dee got the best audience reaction, so that's why they kept him as the chairman. And I think that kind of works on the whole, doesn't it, don't you think?
The third member of the Trinity, before I answer that, Rob Brydon.
That's it.
And the reason I feel it works, which comes back to the formula, is he was the closest to Humph, in terms of style.
Right.
And people wanted more of the same, I think. And I put myself in that category. Because Humph was... it was hard to imagine it without him, but obviously they have managed to do that. And Jack Dee sort of reinvented himself, and I admire that because I think he's grown older gracefully from the sort of we were reminiscing about when alternative comedy was young. He was part of that sort of trailblazing lot, and had very much his own style. And he has, I don't know, on the one hand it feels very much his style. On the other hand, I think he has tweaked the act a bit. And I worried that he wouldn't fit into what is essentially a mainstream show. But I somehow he's grown into it, or I've grown into him doing it, or whatever. I think it works. And I think the fact he's survived quite a few series, because Radio 4 audiences, myself included, are famously fussy old things, and I think he's done well.
Although, I don't know, I wonder whether, we talked about this, was it last week or the week before, or a couple of episodes ago? I know we were talking about commissioning editors, and I the second time I listened through to this, I could hear the words. Our words ringing in my ears, coming back to what we were talking about commissioning editors, and whether it's just that a mix of laziness and comfort. Oh, let's commission another series, and that's how it ended up on series 72. Or do you know what I mean? I'm not really quite sure whether it should have been allowed to go this long. I don't really. I suppose. I mean, there is that if it's doing no harm, it's got a place in the schedule. It keeps the needles wagging. Where's the harm in it,
Yeah, well, I wouldn't want to be too harsh on commissioners, because at the end of the day, they're human, like their audience, and I think we like the comfort as well. I do. Obviously, you're a young whippersnapper, but when I switch it on, I just think it doesn't outstay its welcome. If it ran all year round, it would have run itself into the ground. But because it's, I'm guessing, I'm not looking at it at the moment, the detail, but I'm guessing it runs twice with 2 lots of 6 episodes. I'm seeing if I can establish that at all.
Isn't it curious, though? Here's one to throw at you. Radio 4, or radio comedy per se, which has they've got a monopoly, haven't they, the BBC, really? There's nobody else does what they do in that sector of the market. They don't get challenged at all by that. And they've got this on Series 72. Claire in the Community, we reviewed a couple of weeks ago. What was that, Series 11? Ed Reardon's Week series.
I think Claire was about to finish on 13, but 13, we did review something from 11.
Ed Reardon's Week 12,
13, something like
13,
that. Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying though? Is that there's a correlation between them having absolutely no competition and the laziness of just going, oh yeah, commission another series. What does it matter?
I can see that as an accusation. I think, that's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is to look at, we're mostly talking about 6:30 slot, the 6:30 p.m. slot on Radio 4. And yes, you're right, when it comes to radio, they rule the roost. I mean, you don't even have BBC radio rivalry. You used to have Radio 2 would do a fair bit of comedy. It's not so many years since you had the news headlines.
News headlines, yeah. I used to lie in bed as a kid listening to that.
Yeah, can't see that fitting on the present day Radio 2, but that's the way life goes, I guess. But it is one of the softer targets if you're looking to save money, because of course comedy is relative to having a DJ in the studio banging out the hits. Yeah, it is quite expensive. It's labour intensive. I don't want look. I need to remind people for a full declaration, as they call it, although it's not a full declaration. We'd be here all evening if I declared everything that I've done wrong, that I'm accused of. But I do some work for the BBC as a freelance. I don't have to defend the BBC, and they're not paying me as we speak, because, I'm independent as I speak. But I do feel I at least want to fly the flag that, they could have given up on comedy altogether for the same reasons as Radio 2 years ago if they wanted to. So the fact that it's there at all, I think, is a good thing. I kind of understand the argument, but look at the Wednesday night slot or BBC Sounds, the more experimental end, which is just reprising that. Wednesday night, 11 p.m. and 11:15. They'll be looking for, longer term for replacements for these shows. And as I say, Claire in the Community, definitely that is the last one. It's the present one or the one that's just finished. So, they know there's such a thing as comedy series mortality. But I kind of understand both sides of the argument. But at the end of the day, I still laugh at a fair bit of the gags. I'm just sorry, I should say in passing, that we haven't got Mornington Crescent in this one. They see, they do rest some of these rounds every other series or whatever. So within themselves, although notwithstanding the fact that they're doing some things they've been doing for 47 years, they do at least try and rotate things and rest things.
I didn't have a laugh out loud moment. So I was just trying to think whether I did actually, because I did.
Possibly in spite of yourself, you're curmudgeon.
When they were trying to figure out what the products were by the reviews.
Yes.
And the review was, I didn't get perfect balls, I might as well have used a spoon. And somebody said, was it an intimate grooming razor? Which made me laugh. And it was actually an ice cream scoop, wasn't it? Which made me laugh out loud.
A heated ice cream scoop, yeah.
Yeah, but other than that was it for me, really, actually. It was, I thought it was quite a dry episode. And the trouble with these kind of programs and the trouble with panel shows in general can be that they can, but, sometimes the chemistry works. And sometimes the chemistry doesn't work, and you're tossing a coin, aren't you? Really?
What you mean between the panelists?
Yeah. Well, just I mean, you must have done this. I mean, I've done it loads of times. You do a radio show, and you finish it, and you come off, and you think, "Oh, I was on fire this morning. I could do no wrong."
I've never thought that, to be honest.
And then other days you come off and you think, that was the worst thing I've ever done. It was just awful. Nothing gelled. It didn't flow. It didn't. You know what I mean? You just. But
actually, I would query that, because you listen back. Have you not listened back and thought, actually, the ones I think are brilliant aren't as good as I want to believe, and the things that I thought were terrible, the shows that were supposedly terrible, sound all right, actually.
I've had it that way around. I've never had it the other way around. I've never had it where I thought it was good and it was bad. I've always thought it was bad and listened back and it wasn't as bad as I thought it was.
Right. Well, that's the right way round, if it has to be a way round.
Yeah, I suppose so. But what I'm saying is that, sometimes the chemistry just doesn't, I just don't know what it is, but sometimes you just, the harder you try in those circumstances, the worse it gets. And I think this is one of the many things that I have against panel shows. Okay,
well, let's leave that there. Let's park that for now. Although I do
got
feel
a list if you want the other things.
No. We're sensing we're working through something.
Okay.
Let's mention the rest of the panelists. We've already mentioned Tim Brooke-Taylor, obviously Chairman Jack Dee. Tony Hawks was on the same team, or is on the same team in this episode as Tim. So you've got the two T's there. And then Marcus Brigstock is paired with his partner. There is no better pairing, arguably. She is Rachel Parris, and we're going to hear her now in one of those series that was actually, or one of those running what's the term I want? For a little competition. Is that the right term? Anyway, one of those running things where you sing something, the lyrics that belong to another tune to... I'm not explaining this at all well. Anyway,
let's just singing one song to the tune of another.
That's what I'm trying to say. And we have a fine example of that, which you will get. I've called it on my clip here because I have to have little prompts, as you've gathered the reason for that. You've got a Postman Pat.
And finally, Rachel, I'd like you to sing the words of Postman Pat to the tune of You've Got a Friend.
Postman Pat, Postman Pat, Postman Pat and his black and white cat. Early in the morning, just as day is dawning, he picks up all the post bags in his van. Postman Pat, Postman Pat, Postman Pat and his black and white cat. All the birds are singing and the day is just beginning. Pat feels he's a really happy man. Everybody Everybody knows his bright red van. All his friends will smile as he waves to greet them. Maybe you can never be sure. Let us through your door, Postman Pat.
I just stopped her halfway through. I mean, again, it was like it wasn't funny. It wasn't working. I mean, it fit and all the rest of it, but it wasn't. I have been known to be sat in a traffic jam somewhere, crying with laughter at this round. It's by far and away one of my most favourite rounds, and I was just looking at some of the ones, the iconic ones that have really worked, and I thought, you're never going to beat Anarchy in the UK to the tune of Singing in the Rain, are you really? I am an Antichrist. I am an Antichrist. You know, and I think, and that's it was. I don't know. I'm glad you chose that clip, because I think that like typifies exactly what I'm saying. Is that, it was workmanlike. It worked. It fitted, but it just wasn't. It just wasn't doing it for me.
But surely, well, okay, for you is the clue. Pardon the pun. But you'd have to concede it was going down well in the hall again. There is a lift generally to shows if you're actually there when they're being recorded. I know people think, they're whacking on a load of canned laughter, but actually you've got the whole mood of the place.
There wasn't a lot of laughter in that song, though, was there? I mean, there was a big cheer at the end, which I found a bit curious, because I thought, was that because she's a woman that they gave her a big cheer? I don't know what that...
Only you would think that.
It's like virtue signaling. Oh, well done, the woman, very good. It was like, you think, no, that is the epitome of sexism, you idiot. It's the wrong way around. No,
well, I think it's your sexism. You've convinced yourself that's the only reason.
If you applaud somebody because they're a woman, I go, well done, well done, love.
It's only you saying that. It had not occurred to me.
I don't know why there was a big cheer, because it wasn't a particularly stunning performance. That's what I'm saying, is that I found the cheer very odd.
Well, I want to say that she's got a good voice. The best voice of all of them,
I thought she got a terrible voice, personally, but again, it's a subjective thing. She got this quaver in it that was like...
Well, that was deliberate,
nerves, obviously.
No, it's not obviously nerves. It was a deliberate performance thing to give an extra sincerity to it, which made, given the lyrics of Postman Pat not being anything that you can feel too heartfelt if you're not 5 years old,
right?
To give it an extra lift.
Like I say, I can only say for me, can't I? And it didn't.
Of course.
I didn't. I mean, I thought all of that round was not. It was never going to go down in the annals of Clue history, was it? As the best one they've ever done. It's a shame, and that's the problem, isn't it? Is that you kind of, there is a comparative process that goes on there, because you think, I remember it when Barry Cryer used to do them, and he'd be brilliant, because not only could he not make it fit, he couldn't sing either, or you know what I mean? It was that kind of. I don't want to hear her do a great performance and have a lovely singing voice, because that isn't what it's about. That's not comedic. That's go to the West End and do something if you want to do that.
Well, I think the vibrato was to compensate for that, but hey, I quite like hearing someone who can sing. Right. But equally, I appreciate the comedy of someone who can't sing, and the boys proved that. I would maintain there were definitely laughs where it worked particularly well. There was a couplet at the end, and it's only coincidence, and it's because it didn't work technically for the other bits, and of course it's not going to work for every line because it's not written for that. That is the joke of this part of the show. But where it did work, it got an extra laugh towards the end. But I'm not going to convince you. So I think we should go on to the third and final clip.
You've convinced me, actually.
I haven't. You stop taking the mic. That's you and your irony.
I'm going to give you a big round of applause.
That was sarcastic, that applause. Which was my favourite line. I'm sure I've trotted it out before. When Jo Brand came on stage at the height of her fame, or just when it was all moving up a gear in the, must have been the early 90s. And a massive round of applause from the crowd at the Comedy Store where I was. And I think it was a recording as well for the radio. And she said, "Don't be so effing sarcastic." And no one else could come out with that line and then get a massive laugh. There's something about the Brits. We love being insulted, as the good people of Portsmouth have demonstrated at the beginning of this show. When Jack Dee told them they were the densest population anywhere in the UK.
Do you know, it's funny because my favourite line, I went to see Jack Dee in his early days at Birmingham Town Hall. And he came out on stage, and again, because he was doing this like kind of real downbeat thing at the time, that was his shtick, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And he came out on stage, and the whole place erupted. They were screaming and cheering him and all that sort of stuff. And he just stood there and waited until it died down, and then he just said, "Did I tell you I've got a really appalling headache tonight?" and that was like everybody just like, it was just like nothing could raise his mood, sort of thing. It was kind of good stuff.
It must be quite tough to maintain that act when you're going down so well.
Do you know, I really I read his autobiography and I really enjoyed it. He's quite a complex and interesting character, actually. He was I kind of like him. We should slab lead balloons some week. Yeah. Whenever I see the guy who played his neighbour across the street, I saw him in a children's TV show the other day, and he was always coming up complaining about his mother, his mother who lived across the street. And his catchphrase was used to say, because Jack Dee played a character called Rick Spleen, and he'd go, "She's 83, Rick." And that's what he used to say about his mother. I saw him on a children's TV programme, and I expected him to go, "She's 83, Rick."
But he can do other lines,
I think,
amazingly.
Quite obviously he does. He's very versatile. Yeah, sorry. Anyway, you were saying.
That's right. No, don't apologise. I should just say it's a BBC Studios production, but we probably read between the lines and worked that out. John Naismith is the producer. I was going to talk about, who we think writes the material. There's certainly a reference to, is it Ian Pattinson?
Yeah, there's two of them. There's two kind of, yeah.
I've scribbled it down somewhere. What's his name? Fraser Steele.
Yeah.
And the credit there is program consultant. Reminded me of going back to Wogan's shows where there was a reference in the credits to program associate. And that's because the TV show didn't want you to know that someone had written Terry's monologues. And very often it was a guy called Neil Shand, who sadly, Terry, is no longer with us.
A prolific writer as well, though, Neil wasn't he? He used to do a lot of script writing and various bits and pieces. Ian Patterson has been with the show since series 18.
Oh, so is Johnny come lately then?
Yeah, and I think they got Fraser in, I think, to add a bit of new. He's obviously younger. He also writes for 8 out of 10 Cats. I don't know if you.
Oh right, I have seen that occasionally.
So he's kind of used to writing for this kind of the comedy panel show, and obviously he's there to bring a bit of up to date. What is it? Sam Goldwyn said, up to date, snappy 17th century dialogue. So.
Absolutely, and it works.
Yeah.
Just quickly, just before I play this clip, which I promise I will, you referenced Mark Steele, and Mark Steele's In Town is the series, isn't it? I once tweeted a former colleague, because I worked in the wilds of Shropshire, beautiful part of the world, and Mark Steele visited, I think, Shrewsbury, the county town, or Shrewsbury, or Shoebury, depending on how you want to pronounce it. And I was surprised to learn that, and comforted in a way, that they'd used local talent, a local writer, to write up the specifically local material for Mark Steele, for part of that show.
Oh, right, that's nice.
I didn't realise he did that, because I'd kind of assumed... it shows what a fit he makes it, and that's part of the skill of the artiste. It sounds like Mark's own words, of course, and it's written to sound like that. But
I've interviewed Mark about when he did Walsall, my hometown, my town of birth, and he never let on, because we were talking about he made a big thing about the hippopotamus in Walsall. If you don't know what that is, then Google it.
Or go to Walsall.
Yeah, or go to Walsall. Although you probably would. It's not that big, actually, so you probably wouldn't find it. You'd have to have a good old scour. But yeah, he never cracked on that he hadn't written it. So,
well, I'm not saying that he doesn't write part of it, or that. I mean, I can only speak for the Shropshire show. it did make me think, obviously there's some specialist knowledge there, but of course, as you always say, you can Google it. So I wouldn't want to condemn him on that. And if you own the material, I suppose it's nice to credit writers, but when you're in front of a crowd, there's a part of the buzz is that it feels like you own the material. Anyway, we are going to go out on this clip, which is sexed down. It's songs, isn't it? Song titles. I can't see my full title for this clip. But anyway, it becomes self-explanatory, and we'll see if we can raise a chuckle with Shane. Yeah, I know. It's not going to be easy. See if I can turn it up to 11.
Well, it's very nearly the end of the show, but it's just time to fit in a quick round of Sexed Down Songbook. Samantha has to nip out now as she's off to enjoy the HMS Victory experience. She says she's keen to go again, as on her last visit she was amazed to learn how to take an 8-pounder through the porthole. This round, teams, I'd like you to suggest some sexed down titles of well-known romantic songs. So you can start this one, Marcus.
Je t'aime lions.
Tim.
You can leave your teeth in.
Tony.
When I think about you, I touch my shelf.
Rachel.
Moobs like Jagger.
I must have, by this stage, and the material's not that bad, is it? But by this stage, I'm kind of feeling a bit punned out. I'm punned drunk.
Yeah. It's not easy, is it?
No.
As my dad was once told
by
a client.
I've written in my notes a big bag of puns. It's like kind of, there's a lot of puns in there, not just in this round, but in other rounds as well. And you kind of think, I've got to the stage now where let's do something
drunk.
Yeah. Let's do something else now.
Yes. What would that something else be then? Just to turn the tables on you.
Anything I was praying for. Maybe that's the a Mornington Crescent would have been a nice diversion.
Yeah, because Mornington Crescent, for those who don't know, is. Well, the gag is there are no rules, and you just mentioned one a London Underground station after another. Although I think there's some form in that they are looking, I'm imagining, at a tube map, and it is vaguely in the right order. Well, I've never actually analysed it, and in a sense, it wouldn't matter, of course, being surreal. But I just love that, and the way Jack will say at the top of each round of that we're playing the whatever rules, the Queensberry rules on this occasion.
Yeah,
which means I don't know. Manor Park is low. Manor Park is low.
Although after 72 series, I'm not really quite sure that still could save it. I don't know. I mean, the difficulty is that it's a long running institution, as you've said, and they've tried to bring it up to date. I'm surprised they still allowed the Samantha gags. I would have thought they would have tried to, get rid of the double entendre, the smut, or whatever you want to call it.
But that's part of the act. Well, obviously you've missed out on Sven. I haven't worked out whether he's on every other show, but Sven is very often in his trunks, and apparently, he's a svelte chap. So, that's when Samantha's on holidays or wherever she goes. HMS Victory, probably.
Right. It suffers from the left-wingism as well, doesn't it? I mean, I suppose all comedy does and entertainment does. I said this to you before. It's like it's always from a left-wing perspective. I think, they did a gag. It was another set of puns, wasn't it, or something? And Marcus Brigstock, he said, what did he say? He said, Piers Morgan, Rod Liddell and Toby Young in Desert Island Dicks. And I thought, what? They never say Gary Lineker, Owen Jones, and Justin Welby, which would work equally as well.
that would be an interesting threesome, if you'll pardon the expression. A point taken. Although I must have, forgive me, clued out a little bit to that gag. I hadn't picked up on that. They did smuggle in a Brexit gag, which you may well make a similar accusation against.
Yeah,
it's Coronation Chicken.
The American
Street,
American dig, wasn't it? Coronation Street. Yeah,
which gets close to your was it Orange Man Bad? As you call anti-Donald Trump.
I would just love for once, it's just the lowest common denominator, isn't it? They're kind of I just. For once, you just kind of think, I don't know, maybe that wouldn't play out very well for London audiences, perhaps. I don't know.
Well, then they're not just London audiences, though, are they?
They are in the studio, aren't they, I guess, in the theatre or wherever they are,
Well, it does go on tour, but you might say it attracts audiences,
Radio 4 audiences then maybe would be a better, more accurate description, perhaps. I don't know, but...
Well, let's put you out of your misery. I'm so sorry I hadn't a clue in choosing this, and I was hoping to bring you some mirth.
I've got to say, it wasn't the worst, half an hour. It wasn't I don't think it's the worst thing by a long stretch that we've... But it was like revisiting an old friend and finding that...
They lost their teeth. People could say that about Africa, well,
I did like that Tim Taylor when you can leave your teeth in so that you can leave your hat on. I thought it was quite nice.
Yes.
But yeah. Sorry, go on. Yes. So,
I wonder, all the accusations you make against them for being long running, surely that's going to apply to the Comedy Slab eventually. I mean, they're on Series 72. We're on show 71.
Yeah.
There is a pattern. You've got to have a system, as Harry Hill says.
Although I'm determined that it won't run past 800.
Okay, well, I thought you meant 8 o'clock. I don't think I'll run past 800. I got too much on the clock already. Right, it must be your turn. It is indeed your turn for marks out of 5 for, I'm sorry I haven't a clue, that particular essipode.
All right, I'm going to go with my gut on this one. You can overthink this, can't you? And my gut says, I'm going to lift my shirt up and see what it says. If my gut says 2.5. 2.5, 3.
Compared to what it could have been. Oh.
3, no, 2.5.
Any advance on 2.5?
2.5, I think. I think
2.5 going for the gentleman with the headphones on.
Yeah, I mean, even to the point that it's like you say, it's not the show, it's the episode of the show. That we're marking here because that's what we've listened to. Sure. So you're right. So I mean, I don't think I'd give the show 2.5. I think I'd give it more than 2.5. Some of the episodes that I've heard previously. So just for this particular one, I don't think it gelled. I don't think the chemistry was there. I don't know. I just thought I'm a big fan of Marcus Brigstock. I'm a big fan of
you hit it well.
Tony Hawk's. Although I prefer his writing, I think he's a fabulous writer. He's written some fabulous books like Playing the Moldovans at Tennis and Round Island with a Fridge. And
that's just writing up his adventures, isn't it?
Yeah. What was the other one? The one that I really liked was when he talks about meeting his wife. Was it Up the Pyrenees with a Piano or something like that? I think something.
That does sound like I'm sorry, I haven't a clue gag.
It does, doesn't it, really?
Involving Samantha.
Yeah, but anyway, sorry, I'm dragging it out. 2.5.
Okay, well, no, it's given me more thinking time. And as you say, you can overthink these things, and sure enough, I have. I'm going to go with 3.5. And I confess, it's partly for this episode, and I know I'm breaking the rules a bit, the very rules you've sort of we'd agreed on. But it's sort of out of respect for any show that gets to Series 72. Even if you can argue that, maybe that's the commissioner just hitting copy and paste. I don't know. I think there's still life in it, and you can hear the life in the hall. And I think there's a place for something that's, like a comfortable pair of slippers, as long as you've got the, spikier stilettos. Ooh, matron, on other occasions. I'm sure we'll get a spikier stiletto on the Comedy Slab soon. But for now, have we stopped totting up the score out of 10? That's take away one character. Thank you. Yeah, that's time for me to go back to my maths classes, I think. So, well, respectable enough. And, yeah, not bad for Series 72. So, to your homework for next week for me.
I can't really tell you much about this other than I think it's a Sky production, or certainly a Sky commission. What can I tell you about it? I mean, I just saw the trails for it, and I just thought we've got to slab that because it's new. And it got a decent enough cast to it as well. And I thought, we should have a look and see. It's I don't know if you've ever come across it at all. It's called The Cockfields.
No, I think I'd remember.
And it's an unusual. I mean, I don't know if this is a Sky thing or is it Gold? I think that produce it, or Sky, or they're all part of the same family, aren't they these days? But the reason it caught my eye is because it's a 3-parter. It's like a mini series, so 3 episodes. Which I kind of thought, in this day and age of 6, we kind of, but I think they do 3 1 hours, so it kind of amounts to the same sort of thing anyway, I guess, really. But yeah, TV miniseries, I think they bill it as. But it's just about a family. One of the main characters, Simon, takes his girlfriend to the Isle of Wight to spend his 40th with his family and with his girlfriend as well. Stars Sue Johnston, Joe Wilkinson, Sarah Parrish, and many others that you recognise as well. So I thought we'd just do episode 1 from it is only the first series. I think that it's just going to be a one-off kind of thing, really. So The Cockfields, episode 1.
Brilliant. Okay. On anti-social media, we are at Comedy Slab on Twitter. It'd be lovely if you could follow us there. We tweet sparingly. It's quality, not quantity, so we won't overburden you with things. But equally, it would be good for you to be across that. And we're also at Comedy Slab on Facebook, so if you could like that page, that would be fab too. Thank you very much. Oh, and any recommendation to friends, family, and religious leaders, atheists, whomever, Quakers, you name it. We'd appreciate that too. And a generous star rating on iTunes / Apple Podcasts. We don't ask for much, do we?
No, not really. If you want to hear previous episodes or just want to go and have a pick and mix, you can. We're at Spreaker, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, YouTube. If you go in your fridge and open that little flappy thing at the top, just behind where the light is, there's a couple of episodes there on a USB stick.
You got an internet-connected fridge. I knew you'd have one first.
Oh man,
do
you know what? I really covet one of those. One of these days. I mean, just to know that you need more butter, but because your fridge told you, not because you took the lid off the butter. I mean, it's just.
But I've got a feeling it's going to speak your weight as well and say, "Ooh, I wouldn't have that chocolate." Ooh.
Oh, hold on, Tubby. Where do you think you're going?
Excusez-moi.
But yeah, no, you can get us on all great connected devices as well.
And talking of connected devices, this has been Adrian. He's Shane. We'd love you to join us next time for not Series 72, but Episode 72 of I'm Sorry, I Haven't a Slab.